prestigious schools, are being born with exceptional talent. The real secret lies in something much simpler yet more powerful. Smart people have cracked the code of continuous learning. They've discovered that intelligence isn't fixed. It's expandable. While most people stop learning after formal education, truly intelligent individuals treat every single day as an opportunity to grow, adapt, and evolve. They understand that in our rapidly changing world, yesterday's knowledge becomes tomorrow's limitation. The most successful people you admire, the innovators who shape industries, the leaders who inspire millions, they all share one common trait. They never stop learning. They're not necessarily smarter than you. They've just figured out how to get smarter every single day. Today you're going to discover the exact strategies, habits, and mindsets that separate the top 1% from everyone else. By the end of this video, you'll have a complete blueprint for accelerating your intelligence and staying ahead of 99% of people for the rest of your life. Chapter 1: The Growth Mindset Revolution. The single most important discovery in modern psychology might be the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. This isn't just academic theory. This is the foundation that determines whether you'll spend your life stagnating or continuously ascending to new levels of capability and success. People with a fixed mindset believe that intelligence, talent, and abilities are set in stone. They think you're either smart or you're not, either talented or you lack talent. When they encounter challenges, they see them as threats to their identity. When they fail, they interpret it as proof that they're not good enough. This mindset is absolutely devastating because it creates a ceiling on your potential that you impose on yourself. But here's where it gets fascinating. People with a growth mindset see intelligence as something that can be developed. They view challenges as opportunities to grow stronger. They see failure not as a reflection of their worth, but as valuable feedback that guides their next steps. This small shift in perspective creates an entirely different life trajectory. When you truly internalize that your brain is like a muscle that grows stronger with use, everything changes. The neuroscience behind this is remarkable. Your brain has something called neuroplasticity, which means it literally rewires itself based on your experiences and efforts. Every time you learn something new, your brain forms new neural connections. Every time you practice a skill, those connections become stronger and faster. This process continues throughout your entire life, which means you can become significantly more intelligent at any age. Smart people understand this at a deep level. They don't see their current abilities as limitations. They see them as starting points. When they encounter something they don't understand, instead of saying, "I'm not good at this," they say, "I'm not good at this yet." That simple word "yet" changes everything because it acknowledges that abilities can be developed. This mindset shift has profound practical implications. When you believe you can improve, you're willing to take on challenges that might initially seem beyond your capabilities. You're willing to persist through difficulties because you know that struggle is the mechanism of growth. You start to embrace the discomfort of not knowing because you understand it's temporary and necessary for expansion. Research shows that students who are taught about neuroplasticity and growth mindset significantly improve their academic performance. But this goes far beyond academics. In business, employees with growth mindsets are more innovative, more resilient, and more likely to advance in their careers. In relationships, people with growth mindsets are better at resolving conflicts and building deeper connections in every area of life. Believing that you can improve actually makes improvement more likely. The key is to start catching yourself when you slip into fixed mindset thinking. When you hear yourself saying, "I'm just not a math person," or "I'm terrible at public speaking," pause and reframe it. Add the word "yet" to the end of the sentence. Better yet, ask yourself, "How can I get better at this?" This simple question shifts your brain from a defensive limiting mode to a creative problem-solving mode. Smart people also understand that intelligence comes in many forms. You might not be naturally gifted at mathematics, but you could have exceptional emotional intelligence. You might struggle with traditional academic subjects but excel at creative problem solving. The goal isn't to be good at everything. It's to identify your natural strengths and systematically develop them while also working on areas that matter for your goals. Chapter 2. The Power of Microlearning. Most people think that learning requires large blocks of time, formal courses, or intensive study sessions. This belief is one of the biggest barriers to continuous growth because it makes learning feel overwhelming and impractical given our busy lives. Smart people have discovered a completely different approach. Microlearning. They understand that small consistent doses of learning are far more effective than sporadic intensive efforts. The science behind this is compelling. Your brain processes and consolidates information better when it's received in smaller chunks over time rather than in large quantities all at once. This phenomenon known as the spacing effect shows that distributed learning leads to better retention and deeper understanding than mass learning. When you learn something new, your brain needs time to encode that information into long-term memory. By spacing out your learning, you give your brain multiple opportunities to strengthen those neural pathways. Consider this. If you spend just 10 minutes a day learning something new, that adds up to over 60 hours of learning in a year. That's equivalent to more than a week of full-time study. The remarkable thing is that 10 minutes feels manageable to anyone. But 60 hours feels like a significant commitment. This is the power of microlearning. It makes continuous education feel effortless while delivering substantial results. Smart people apply this principle systematically. They might listen to educational podcasts during their commute, read articles during lunch breaks, or watch educational videos before bed. They understand that every small moment is an opportunity to grow. They don't wait for perfect conditions or large blocks of time. They seize whatever time they have available. The key to effective microlearning is consistency and intentionality. Random learning is less effective than focused learning aligned with your goals. Smart people identify specific areas they want to develop and then systematically expose themselves to high-quality information in those areas. They might spend 5 minutes a day reading about negotiation tactics if they want to improve their business skills, or 10 minutes studying a new language if they want to expand their cultural competence. One of the most powerful microlearning strategies is the technique of active recall. Instead of passively consuming information, smart people regularly test themselves on what they've learned. After reading an article, they close it and try to summarize the key points from memory. After listening to a podcast, they explain the main concepts to someone else. This active engagement with the material dramatically improves retention and understanding. Another crucial element is connecting new information to existing knowledge. Smart people don't just accumulate random facts. They build interconnected webs of knowledge. When they learn something new, they ask themselves how it relates to what they already know, how it challenges their existing beliefs, and how they can apply it in their life or work. This creates a rich integrated understanding rather than isolated pieces of information. Technology has made microlearning easier and more accessible than ever before. There are countless apps, podcasts, YouTube channels, and online courses designed specifically for bite-sized learning. Smart people leverage these tools strategically. They curate their information diet just as carefully as they curate their food diet, choosing high-quality sources that align with their learning objectives. The compound effect of microlearning is extraordinary. Just as small amounts of money invested consistently can grow into substantial wealth through compound interest, small amounts of learning invested consistently can grow into substantial expertise and wisdom. The person who reads for 10 minutes a day will read dozens of books per year. The person who practices a skill for 15 minutes daily will develop noticeable competence within months. Smart people also understand that microlearning works best when it's enjoyable. They choose learning methods that engage them rather than bore them. If traditional reading feels tedious, they might prefer audiobooks or video content. If passive learning feels ineffective, they might prefer interactive courses or discussions with others. The goal is to find approaches that feel sustainable and engaging over the long term. Chapter 3. Strategic Information Consumption. In our information-saturated world, the ability to learn isn't limited by access to information. It's limited by the ability to filter and process information effectively. Smart people understand that not all information is created equal. They've developed sophisticated systems for identifying, consuming, and applying high-value information while avoiding the noise that distracts and overwhelms most people. The first principle of strategic information consumption is selectivity. While average people consume information randomly and reactively, smart people are intentional and proactive about their information diet. They recognize that their attention is their most valuable resource and they guard it carefully. They ask themselves critical questions before consuming any piece of content. Will this information help me achieve my goals? Is this source credible and authoritative? Is this the best use of my limited time and mental energy? Smart people have learned to distinguish between information and knowledge. Information is raw data, facts and opinions that exist everywhere around us. Knowledge is information that has been processed, understood, and integrated into a useful framework. Wisdom is knowledge that has been applied successfully in real-world situations. Most people get stuck at the information level, constantly consuming but never truly learning. Smart people focus on converting information into knowledge and knowledge into wisdom. One of the most important skills they develop is source evaluation. They understand that the credibility and expertise of the source dramatically affects the value of the information. They prioritize learning from people who have achieved what they want to achieve, who have deep expertise in relevant areas, and who have a track record of accurate insights and predictions. They're skeptical of information from sources with obvious biases, conflicts of interest, or limited expertise. Smart people also understand the importance of primary sources versus secondary sources. Instead of relying solely on summaries, interpretations, or opinions about important topics, they often go directly to original research, foundational texts, and first-hand accounts. This gives them a deeper, more nuanced understanding and helps them avoid the distortions that occur when information passes through multiple filters. They've mastered the art of skimming and scanning to quickly identify valuable content. They don't feel obligated to consume everything in its entirety. Instead, they quickly assess whether a book, article, or video contains information relevant to their goals. If it does, they engage deeply. If not, they move on without guilt. This skill allows them to process much larger volumes of potentially valuable content and identify the gems worth their full attention. Cross-referencing is another crucial strategy. Smart people rarely rely on single sources for important information. They seek out multiple perspectives on significant topics, looking for patterns and inconsistencies. This helps them develop more accurate mental models and avoid being misled by biased or incomplete information. They understand that truth often emerges from the intersection of multiple viewpoints rather than from any single source. They also understand the importance of balancing breadth and depth. While it's important to have a broad understanding of many topics, it's equally important to develop deep expertise in areas that matter most for your goals. Smart people identify their core domains of focus and invest heavily in those areas while maintaining a lighter touch in other areas. This prevents them from becoming superficial generalists while also avoiding the tunnel vision that can come from excessive specialization. Smart people are also strategic about timing their information consumption. They recognize that their mental energy varies throughout the day and they align their learning activities with their natural rhythms. They might consume challenging technical content when their minds are fresh and lighter. Entertainment-oriented content when they're tired. They understand that the same information consumed at different times can have dramatically different impacts on learning and retention. They've developed systems for capturing and organizing important information. Whether it's through note-taking apps, physical notebooks, or mental frameworks, they ensure that valuable insights don't get lost in the flood of daily information. They regularly review and synthesize their notes, looking for connections and patterns that might not have been obvious during initial consumption. Perhaps most importantly, smart people focus on actionable information. They constantly ask themselves how they can apply what they're learning. Information that can't be applied is often forgotten quickly, while information that gets put into practice becomes integrated into their capabilities and habits. They don't just read about productivity techniques. They experiment with implementing them. They don't just study negotiation strategies. They practice using them in real situations. Chapter 4. Building Cognitive Flexibility. Cognitive flexibility is perhaps the most underrated component of intelligence. Yet, it's becoming increasingly crucial in our rapidly changing world. It's the ability to adapt your thinking when new information contradicts your existing beliefs. To switch between different mental frameworks depending on the situation and to see problems from multiple angles simultaneously. While most people develop rigid thought patterns and stick to familiar approaches, smart people cultivate mental agility that allows them to thrive in complex, ambiguous and changing environments. The foundation of cognitive flexibility is intellectual humility. This is the recognition that your current understanding is incomplete and that you might be wrong about things you feel certain about. Smart people hold their beliefs lightly, treating them as working hypotheses rather than absolute truths. They're genuinely curious about evidence that contradicts their views because they understand that being wrong is an opportunity to become more right. This mindset is uncomfortable for most people because it requires giving up the psychological comfort of certainty. But it's essential for continuous learning and growth. One of the most powerful exercises for developing cognitive flexibility is actively seeking out opposing viewpoints. Instead of surrounding themselves with people who think the same way, smart people deliberately expose themselves to different perspectives, cultures, and ways of thinking. They read books by authors they disagree with, engage in conversations with people who have different values, and study how problems are approached in different fields and industries. This doesn't mean they're wishy-washy or constantly changing their minds. It means they're gathering more complete information before forming strong opinions. Smart people also practice mental model switching. They understand that different situations require different ways of thinking. The analytical thinking that works well for financial planning might be less effective for creative problem solving. The systematic approach that works for managing projects might be too rigid for navigating interpersonal relationships. They develop a toolkit of different mental frameworks and practice switching between them based on the demands of the situation. Another crucial aspect of cognitive flexibility is comfort with ambiguity and uncertainty. While most people feel anxious when they don't have clear answers or definitive information, smart people have learned to function effectively in uncertain environments. They understand that many important decisions must be made with incomplete information and that waiting for perfect clarity often means missing opportunities. They develop decision-making frameworks that help them move forward despite uncertainty while remaining open to adjusting course as new information emerges. Pattern recognition across different domains is another hallmark of cognitive flexibility. Smart people study how principles and strategies from one field might apply to completely different areas. They might apply lessons from biology to business strategy, insights from physics to personal relationships, or techniques from athletics to intellectual performance. This cross-pollination of ideas often leads to breakthrough innovations and novel solutions to persistent problems. Smart people also practice scenario thinking. Instead of assuming the future will unfold in a predictable way, they regularly consider multiple possible futures and how they might respond to different scenarios. This mental exercise helps them prepare for various contingencies and makes them less likely to be blindsided by unexpected changes. They ask questions like, what if this assumption is wrong? How would I approach this problem if I had different constraints? And what would someone from a completely different background do in this situation? The ability to zoom in and zoom out is another important dimension of cognitive flexibility. Smart people can focus intensely on specific details when necessary, but they can also step back and see the bigger picture. They can think in terms of immediate actions and long-term consequences, individual decisions and systemic patterns. This multi-level thinking helps them make better decisions and avoid the tunnel vision that comes from operating at only one level of analysis. Experimentation is a natural extension of cognitive flexibility. Smart people treat their approaches and strategies as experiments rather than permanent commitments. They're willing to try new methods even when their current approaches are working reasonably well. They understand that what works in one context might not work in another and that conditions are constantly changing in ways that might make current approaches obsolete. They also practice perspective taking, deliberately trying to see situations from other people's points of view. This isn't just about empathy. Although empathy is important, it's about understanding that different people have different information, priorities, and constraints that lead them to different conclusions. By understanding these different perspectives, smart people can communicate more effectively, anticipate how others will respond to their actions, and find creative solutions that work for multiple stakeholders. Finally, smart people understand that cognitive flexibility requires ongoing maintenance. Just as physical flexibility requires regular stretching and exercise, mental flexibility requires regular challenges to your thinking. They actively seek out new experiences, learn new skills that challenge their existing capabilities, and put themselves in situations where their usual approaches might not work. This continuous stretching of their mental capabilities ensures that they remain adaptable and resilient as the world around them changes. Chapter 5: The Art of Active Curiosity. Curiosity is often dismissed as a nice-to-have trait, something that makes people more interesting but not necessarily more successful. This is a profound mistake. Curiosity is actually one of the most powerful drivers of intelligence and achievement. It's the engine that motivates continuous learning, the compass that guides exploration toward valuable discoveries, and the fuel that sustains intellectual effort when it becomes difficult or boring. Smart people don't just happen to be curious. They actively cultivate and channel their curiosity in strategic ways. The first thing to understand about curiosity is that it's not a passive state of mind. It's an active process of questioning, exploring, and investigating. While passive curiosity might lead you to wonder about something momentarily, active curiosity compels you to actually seek answers, conduct experiments, and pursue understanding until you achieve genuine insight. Smart people have developed the habit of following their curiosity wherever it leads, even when it takes them into unfamiliar or challenging territory. Active curiosity begins with better questions. While most people ask superficial questions that can be answered quickly and easily, smart people ask deeper questions that reveal fundamental principles and underlying patterns. Instead of asking what happened, they ask why did this happen and what does this tell us about how similar situations might unfold. Instead of asking how do I solve this specific problem, they ask what class of problems does this represent and what general principles might help me solve all problems in this category. One of the most powerful questioning techniques is the 5 W's method. When you encounter something interesting or problematic, ask why and then continue asking why to each subsequent answer until you've dug down to root causes or fundamental principles. This simple technique often reveals surprising insights and connections that aren't visible on the surface level. Smart people use this approach not just for problem solving but for understanding any phenomenon that captures their attention. Smart people also practice lateral curiosity, exploring connections between seemingly unrelated topics. While most people study subjects in isolation, curious individuals constantly ask, how does this relate to that? And what would happen if I combined these ideas? This cross-pollination of concepts from different fields often leads to breakthrough insights and innovative solutions. Many of the greatest discoveries in human history have come from people who were curious enough to explore connections across traditional boundaries. Another hallmark of active curiosity is the willingness to follow interesting tangents. While conventional wisdom suggests staying focused and avoiding distractions, smart people understand that some of the most valuable learning happens when you allow yourself to explore unexpected paths. They practice what might be called controlled wandering, giving themselves permission to follow interesting side trails while maintaining enough awareness to return to their main objectives when appropriate. Smart people also develop what could be called strategic ignorance awareness. They're constantly scanning for gaps in their knowledge, especially gaps that might be limiting their effectiveness or understanding. Instead of pretending they know everything or avoiding topics they find challenging, they actively seek out their blind spots and knowledge gaps. They ask themselves questions like, what important things don't I know about this topic? And what assumptions am I making that might be wrong? The practice of active curiosity also involves seeking out mystery and complexity rather than avoiding it. While most people prefer simple, clear-cut answers, curious individuals are drawn to nuanced, ambiguous, and multifaceted phenomena. They understand that the most interesting and valuable insights often lie in the gray areas where simple explanations break down. They're willing to sit with confusion and uncertainty because they know that real understanding often emerges slowly from wrestling with complex ideas. Smart people also understand that curiosity can be systematically developed and directed. They create what might be called curiosity systems, structured approaches for exploring topics that interest them. This might involve maintaining a list of fascinating questions to investigate, setting aside regular time for pure exploration, or creating learning projects that combine multiple interests. They understand that while spontaneous curiosity is valuable, intentional curiosity is even more powerful. They also practice curiosity about people and relationships, not just abstract concepts and technical topics. They're genuinely interested in understanding how other people think, what motivates them, how they make decisions, and what they've learned from their experiences. This social curiosity makes them better collaborators, leaders, and friends, while also providing them with insights they couldn't gain through solitary study. Perhaps most importantly, smart people maintain curiosity about themselves. They regularly examine their own thinking processes, emotional patterns, and behavioral habits. They ask themselves questions like, why do I react this way to this type of situation? And what beliefs am I holding that might be limiting my effectiveness? This self-directed curiosity leads to greater self-awareness and more intentional personal development. The compound effect of active curiosity over time is extraordinary. Each question leads to new knowledge which suggests new questions which lead to deeper understanding which opens up new possibilities for action and achievement. Curious people don't just accumulate more facts. They develop richer mental models of how the world works. And these models make them more effective at navigating complex challenges and identifying valuable opportunities. In essence, curiosity doesn't just make you smarter, it makes your intelligence more useful and impactful. Chapter 6. Deep Work and Focus Mastery. In our hyperconnected world, the ability to focus deeply has become a rare and increasingly valuable skill. While most people are trapped in cycles of constant distraction, smart people have learned to cultivate what researchers call deep work. The ability to focus without distraction on cognitively demanding tasks. This isn't just about productivity. It's about accessing higher levels of cognitive performance that are impossible to achieve in a scattered, reactive state of mind. The modern world is deliberately designed to fragment your attention. Every notification, email alert, and social media update is engineered by teams of neuroscientists and behavioral psychologists to capture and hold your focus. Companies spend billions of dollars studying how to make their products more addictive, more compelling, and harder to ignore. Your attention has become the most valuable commodity in the digital economy, and it's under constant assault. But here's what most people don't understand. Your ability to focus deeply isn't just about getting more done. It's about the quality of work you can produce. When you're constantly switching between tasks, checking your phone, and responding to interruptions, your brain never reaches the depths of concentration required for truly innovative thinking. You're operating in a state of what researchers call continuous partial attention, where you're always somewhat distracted and never fully engaged with any single task. Deep work, in contrast, allows you to push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. It's in these extended periods of uninterrupted focus that breakthrough insights emerge. Complex problems get solved and high-value skills get developed. The difference in output quality between deep work and shallow work isn't incremental. It's exponential. An hour of focused, uninterrupted work can often accomplish more than an entire day of fragmented effort. Smart people understand that deep work is a skill that must be systematically developed. Like physical fitness, it requires training, discipline, and gradual progression. You can't expect to suddenly focus deeply for hours if you've been operating in a state of constant distraction. Your attention span is like a muscle that has atrophied from disuse, and it needs to be gradually strengthened through deliberate practice. The first step in developing deep work capacity is understanding the different types of focus and when each is most valuable. There's controlled attention, which is the effortful concentration required for challenging cognitive tasks. There's selective attention, which involves filtering out distractions while